Not typically.
I wasn't saying that people are using that.
I'd like to call to order the public hearing scheduled for tonight, November 2nd, 2020. The deputy clerk, would you read the call to the public hearing, please?
Notice is hereby given by the chair of the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators that the chair and the members of the Board of Legislators of the County of St. Lawrence will meet at the Board of Legislators Chambers Courthouse located at 48 Court Street, Canton, New York at 5:45 p.m. on Monday, November 2nd, 2020 for the purpose of conducting a public hearing regarding the adoption of the 2021 budget, followed by the November full board meeting. Further notice is hereby given that copies of the tentative budget are available at the office of the clerk of the Board of Legislators at Canton, New York, where they may be inspected or procured by any interested person during business hours. Pursuant to Section 359 of County Law, the maximum salaries that may be fixed and payable during said fiscal year to members of said Board of Legislators and to the chair, respectively, are hereby specified as follows. Members of the Board of Legislators, $12,000. Vice Chair of the Board of Legislators, $14,000. Chair of the Board of Legislators, $17,000. The 2021 Budget Summary, Exhibit A. Total budget. General Government Support, $57,081,500. Education, $651,000. Public Safety, $17,694,191. Health, $16,237,761. Transportation, $25,562,374. Economic Assistance Opportunity, $69,511,651. Culture and Recreation, $387,756. Home and Community Services, $7,478,261. Employee Benefits, $36,829,103. Debt Service, $2,267,788. Interfund Transfers, $15,919,093. Total appropriations, $249,620,478 by order of the Board of Legislators.
Thank you. Now's the time for public comment. Any citizen wanting to address the board is asked to stand at the microphone during the time that they address the board. The address will be limited to a time of 5 minutes. Please state your name before beginning your address. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the content of this public hearing? Anybody out there? Seeing none, declare this public hearing closed. County Board of Legislators meeting, November 2nd, 2020, 6 o'clock. I entertain a motion to suspend the rules due to the Executive Order 202.1 by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Roll call, please.
Reagan.
Aye.
Forsythe.
Here.
Lightfoot.
Here.
Sheridan.
Here.
Smithers.
Here.
Denisha.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Akers.
Here.
Hay.
Here.
Hager.
Here.
Piacco.
Here.
Burke.
Here.
Marquette.
Here.
Terminelli.
Here.
Curran.
Here.
15 present.
Thank you. Mr. Denisha, would you lead us in prayer and we'll follow with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here this evening. We ask that you accept our continued gratitude for the numerous blessings you have bestowed upon us and our country. We ask that you grant us the ability to work with one another, to cast aside our personal and political differences, so that we may achieve solutions that are best and just for all. When this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger. Conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, coffee with a friend, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be. We were called to be, we hope to be. May we stay that way, better for each other, because of the worst. For all these things, we ask your blessing through your Son and our Lord Jesus Christ, in whose name all things are possible.
Amen.
Amen. Mr. Chairman, I would like to give credit to Laura Kelly Panucci for writing When This Is Over.
Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We start out with Dr. Williams, COVID report. Dr. Williams?
Good evening. So, good evening, everyone. I was going to go ahead and give an update on the situation with COVID-19 in the county. The initial slides are from Dr. McGuire, who's not able to present tonight. And then the second set of slides are from me. So I wanted to just start with a case update. So as of this morning, we have 424 cases. We have 7 people who are currently hospitalized, and we have 36 active cases. We have 375 people who've completed isolation. There are now 5 deaths. The most recent death is not currently recorded in the New York State tracking website, but will be there shortly. As far as an update on testing, we've done more than 88,000 tests. We continue to use the testing sites through St. Lawrence Health System, as well as Claxton, Hepburn, Clifton, Fine, and more recently, the Community Health Center of the North Country in our Canton site is open to the community. Looking at weekly cases, what we see is that there's a significant upward trend. And in this most recent 7-day period, which is not quite over, we're at day 6, we have 34 cases. What we see in terms of average daily cases by week is that we're at 5.8, which is the kind of numbers that we were seeing back in March and April. So again, it seems to be a steady increase over the past 3 weeks. One of the things that we're looking at is trying to break down the cases by type of case, like where the individual may have become infected. And what we're seeing, if you look over in October, September, and August, is that we have a lot of people who are getting infected by family members. So the typical scenario is that somebody gets the infection at work or at a gathering outside the home. But then when they come home, we find that many of the family members who reside with that individual then become infected. The second most common place is the K through 12, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. As far as the age distribution, the average age is 36. We are seeing a significant growth in the 11 through 12 age group. We continue to see people in the 21 to 30 and the 51 through 60 age group, but the average age of death is 75 years for our community, and that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing nationally. Looking at how the average age has trended, and this is for people who are just diagnosed with the illness. There has been a little bit of a downward trend. We started out closer to 45, and now it's at 36.6. So people are a little bit younger, but not as much younger as you see on a national level. As far as gender distribution, the infection remains an equal opportunity infector. So it's roughly 50-50. It's 45 and 55, and that may reflect some tendencies in terms of who gets tested. As far as isolation and quarantine, we currently have 37 people in active isolation. There are 417 who are in active mandatory quarantine and 162 who are in active precautionary quarantine. And the bigger chunk of the pie are people who had previously been through the process, and that's slightly more than 5,000. If you look at the travel advisory, there are currently 41 states or territories who are on the list for the travel advisory. And I'm going to talk shortly about in a future slide about the change in the guidelines for what happens when people travel to those states. So just to summarize, what we've seen in the county is that there's been a significant surge in cases in the past 3 weeks. We're seeing cases at a level that we haven't really seen since April, when things started in the community. There does seem to be a trend where gatherings, both family and community related, are where many of the cases are first identified. We do have some travel related cases, and as the fall semester moves on, we do see a number of sports teams who are becoming infected. And we also are seeing people who are having sleepover parties, and the K through 12 students are becoming infected that way. We are seeing an increase in hospitalizations, which is fairly dramatic, especially in the past week. We have seen an increase in the death toll, and from a public health perspective, we're pretty concerned that there's going to be a continued increase as people move indoors with the colder weather, and also, looking forward to the holidays. We're concerned about the impact that's going to have. I'm going to just take a step back and kind of look at national and regional trends and talk about how that might be impacting us. So if you look at what's happening in the U.S., in September, we actually had a nice downward trend, and we got to the point where we had about 35,000 new cases per day. As you can see, there's a fairly steady upward trend, and we're at about 80 to 100,000 cases per day. As far as deaths, we're seeing somewhere between 900 and 1,000 deaths per day at this point. So there've been more than 9 million cases that are documented in the country. We've seen more than 230,000 deaths, and this is a 15% increase in the past 2 weeks. There are a number of individuals who have chronic COVID-related disabilities. People use the term long hauler syndrome. And we don't really have a number for those people, but I would suggest that that's at least part of what we need to consider. There have been more than 80,000 cases per day, which is a 43% increase in the past 2 weeks. And we have all but 2 states have increasing rates of infection. If you look at the North Country region, which again is 7 counties, what we saw again back in September is that we were at a point regionally where we're getting less than 1 case per day per 100,000 residents. And now we're at more than 5 cases per day per 100,000 residents. And this is in the region. As far as hospitalizations, you also do see a fairly steady increase in hospitalizations. And really, you know, what's happening on the county level is paralleling what's happening nationally and regionally. I did want to talk for a minute about the colleges and just point out that the colleges are doing a tremendous amount of testing. You can see at the bottom that they've done 32,000 tests at all 4 campuses combined. We currently only have 2 active cases, and we've only had 22 cases across the campuses. So it's really been kind of a success story. The colleges are now looking at winding down the fall semester. As of Thanksgiving, all 4 colleges will have the majority of their students will go home. They'll finish the semesters online for the majority of them. But each campus is planning to test their students before they leave, partly just to help protect their home communities, as well as their parents or grandparents who they may be going to live with for the winter break. They're already putting plans together for pre-arrival testing for the winter and spring semester. And really, because things have been so successful, we've advised them essentially to just repeat the same plans that they did in the fall. And each campus is going to be doing some version of that. I did want to mention wastewater surveillance. So we've talked about this before. It's been implemented right now at all 4 colleges. Clarkson University is at the forefront of this. The SUNY system is also doing their testing. And it's basically an early warning system for the campuses, particularly for the resident calls. As with any new application of a technology, there are questions about how to apply it. One of the questions is about how frequently one should be doing the monitoring. And then when you do get a test result, how to interpret it. So like many tests, there's positive and negative, but there's kind of a gray zone where you get very low levels, and we're trying to understand better how to interpret those low level positives. And then trying to figure out what the appropriate public health response is, especially when there's a low level positive. I think a equally important question is, you know, is there an application for other venues? So in other states, they're using this technique for correctional facilities, and also looking to apply it in the pre-K through 12 school systems. Now, I did want to mention we have 41 states that are on the travel advisory. The governor did just update the quarantine and plan basically for people who are traveling. This will be effective as of Wednesday of this week. And interestingly, these regulations do not apply to travel to the contiguous states. So any state that's adjacent to New York State does not count. The way this is set up, there's 2 different categories. It's for people who travel to another state for more than 24 hours. And for these folks, they need to have a test within 72 hours or 3 days of departure from that state. And then when the traveler arrives in New York State, they're supposed to quarantine for 3 days. And keep in mind, the previous recommendation had been a 14-day quarantine. And again, this is just for travelers, but now it's 3 days. And then on the 4th day, once they're back in New York State, on the 4th day that they're back in New York State, they're supposed to be tested again for COVID. And the idea is if both tests are negative, the traveler can actually exit quarantine. So that's a significant change. And again, this will be in effect as of Wednesday. They did also carve out for people who are in another state for less than 24 hours. So that traveler does not need a test prior to leaving the state that they traveled to. They also do not need to quarantine upon arrival to New York State. They do have to fill out the New York State traveler form. And then they need to be tested 4 days after arrival in New York. And then that test needs to be reported, we think, to the local public health. So that's a significant change in the way that we're treating travelers. And that affects our community as it affects many other communities. The next thing I want to talk about is therapeutics and just give a quick update on this. So as far as treatment options, remdesivir is an antiviral medication that we are using in most patients who end up being hospitalized in this community. We're also using dexamethasone, which is also called Decadron. And that is only for people who have significant enough illness that they require oxygen therapy. And then we are using convalescent plasma, but this is really just for the most severe or critically ill people. One interesting development that's been talked about in the news is the antibody or the antibody cocktail. And unfortunately, both Eli Lilly and Regeneron just stopped their trial of the antibody therapy in severely ill patients, both because of a lack of effect and concerns about safety. They are still using both of these in people who have mild or moderate illness. And then finally, vaccine trials, which we talked about when I was presenting before, are still ongoing. Right now, we don't have an approved vaccine, but the understanding is that additional efficacy data will be available sometime in the relatively near future. And we are working on getting ready to receive vaccine and come up with a plan to distribute it. The next question that comes up and conversation is, there's kind of a sense with all these negative trends across the country, is it inevitable that things are just going to get worse in the North Country? And what I wanted to point out is that there are actually examples of local successes and international successes for people who've been able to control this virus. If you look at the 4 colleges in our community, they had very significant challenges, and they still do. So they're in a congregate setting. You've got students who are living in dorms, which are essentially, from a public health perspective, like a cruise ship. You have young adults who are, and I have young adults in my household, so I say this with great kindness, not always the easiest group of people to get to follow certain rules. And you had people who traveled from high prevalence regions to our rural community. But because of the strategic implementation of screening and targeted testing, along with contact tracing and isolation, adherence to the 5 pillars, and a unified message and shared goal, they really have been very successful. Now, you might say, well, these are college campuses, so how could a country do this? Or how could a county do this? And I wanted to point out that South Korea also has a number of challenges. They have very concentrated urban populations. Their median age, which is a risk factor for disease, is 42. In the US, it's 37. And they also have close proximity to China, where the virus originated. And you may notice that the list of their interventions is the same as what happened with our colleges, but again, with screening and targeted testing, contact tracing and isolation, adherence to the 5 pillars of prevention, and a unified message and shared goal, they have a population of 51 million. They have 26,000 cases in the entire country. And this is real data. They're very aggressive about testing. And so we have a very good understanding of what the numbers actually are. 26,000 cases and only 466 deaths. So again, I just put that out there as an example of what we can do as a community. So just, to give a summary, there's been a significant increase in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, both in the nation and regionally and in our county. I think that it's still lapses in prevention and the preventative measures that are at least a contributing factor. There's other factors in terms of environmental changes and people coming indoors. But COVID can be controlled with preventative measures, and specifically these comprehensive testing programs that we've talked about and promoted in the community, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine, and the 5 pillars of prevention. So I would argue that we're at a crossroads, and really there are 2 paths. I'm not going to talk about the 2 paths. I'm going to talk about the path we should take. So I think we really need to re-engage in the efforts to mitigate COVID, and we need to communicate a unified message from public health, from the Board of Legislators. We want to keep our economy, our schools, our religious organizations open and thriving. So that is my update on COVID-19. And I'm just going to end with a slide because I think in terms of what the community can do, the 5 pillars of the community response are critical. So that's my update.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Is there anybody that has any questions for Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Is that Tony? I
Yes,
can't
sir.
see it, Tony. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Williams, thank you for your report. And there are many of us that are hanging on every word of your advice, and I wish more would. Without violating in any way the sanctity of HIPAA, could you give us any details on the 5th fatality?
I think at this point I can't. In all fairness to the family, I think information may become available at the family's discretion, but I think out of respect to them, I won't be able to.
I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
Dr. Williams, the Regeneron, is that the antibody therapy?
It is.
Is that how readily available is it?
So right now it's not readily available. And I guess, the update, frankly, on those 2 things is that I think there was hope that they would be helpful in the, severely ill patients who are in the hospital. And what both companies, both Regeneron and Eli Lilly, just said within the past week is that they said either because of a lack of efficacy or because of safety concerns, they were actually stopping the trials of those medications in those ill patients who are admitted to the hospital. So they are still being made available for people who are mildly ill. One of the challenges for people who are mildly ill, taking a therapy that is still considered experimental, I think is people are not as enthusiastic about that. The moderately ill people, I think, the data is not in yet. There's some promise, but availability and expenses is a concern currently.
Are we using it, doctor?
So there's a trial through St. Lawrence Health System, because it's still an experimental trial for outpatients for one of the 2 agents, which I actually think is the Eli Lilly one, not Regeneron. But it's not part of our therapy for our sick inpatients at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Williams, do you have any idea how many beds we have available? I don't know if they'd be ICU beds or whatever in the county.
Yeah, I don't want to give you a specific number, but what I will say is that when things started to wind up in March, we spent a tremendous amount of time and energy to expand our ICU capabilities in the community, both at Claxton and through St. Lawrence Health System. And I don't want to speak for Claxton, though I think this is true, but at St. Lawrence Health System, we basically decided not to dismantle anything that we had put in place. I'm an optimist and also a cynic. And so we basically, everything that we built up initially is still completely functional. And we had a number of weeks where we actually didn't have any patients in the hospital in the late summer and early fall. And I can tell you that plenty of people came and asked me, what are we going to do with these units that we created? And we decided to just keep them ready. So we have at St. Lawrence Health System and at CPH, we have an entire floor that can be rapidly expanded to something like a 30-bed ICU. So we're still ready. I'm sad to say that we have had to expand our, we've been admitting more and more patients, including today. So hopefully this won't continue, this upward trend.
Mr. Schmidt.
Can you give us any information on COVID testing? When does the individual have to pay for this and when is it free of charge? I've heard quite a variety of comments about this.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at the federal regulations, people are not supposed to be being charged or should not be charged for COVID testing is sort of the way things are written. I believe there can be a charge for the administration of the test. But I've been working with both hospital systems about trying to clarify this very issue, because as far as I can tell, people are not supposed to be charged for this. I think insurance companies can pay for it, but I don't believe patients should be seeing a charge. And St. Lawrence Health System is looking at this carefully to make sure that that's being upheld.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Dr. Williams, thank you. We appreciate your report. Am I correct that you said at the start of your presentation that Dr. McGuire would not be with us tonight?
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving along, every year at this time, we honor our longtime employees with a special presentation. I don't know how many of them are here tonight, but I am going to go through their names, their departments that they work in, and I'll start out with those celebrating 30 years of service. And if you are outside waiting to come in, please do so. From Community Services, Lori Barr. From Human Resources, Kathy Race. From the Sheriff's Department, Matthew Brown. From the County Attorney's Office, Hattie Bice. From the Office of the Aging, Valerie Socia. From Social Services, Lawrence Betsy, Christine Lazore, and Christine Tupper. From Highway, David Fuller. And from Public Health, Bonnie Hayden. We'd like to thank you and honor each and every one of you for 30 years of service to the people of St. Lawrence County. In addition to that, we have 3 employees that are celebrating 35 years of service to the county. From Highway, Harry Diedrich and John Waite. And from Social Services, Darcy Lacombe. I've got to think that in the interest of taking good care of their health and with the COVID doing what it's doing to us, that they have probably elected to remain at home and not expose themselves any more than they absolutely have to. So we thank them for their service. We wish that they were here to honor them in person and present them with certificates of recognition. But the second best thing is to make everybody aware of who they are and the devotion that they've had to the people of St. Lawrence County, and we thank them. Moving along, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda by Mr. Forsythe, second by Mr. Denisha. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 5th full board and the October 19th special board meeting by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Are there any communications?
We have 3 communications that came through to the public comment email address, and I'll read them. The first one is from Felicia Dumas. She is the Executive Director of the St. Lawrence County CDP. The St. Lawrence County Community Development Program assists low-income individuals to attain self-sufficiency through education, guidance, and services. You may know our agency through our programs such as Head Start, Housing Choice Voucher Program, Weatherization, and our neighborhood centers. We have included our annual impact report for your review, and I just wanted to take a minute to highlight some of our services. This report covers July 2019 through June 2020. During that time, Head Start served 351 families, 61 families received weatherization services, 830 housing choice vouchers were administered, and 2,467 households throughout the county received food assistance through the neighborhood centers. On page 6 of the impact report, you will see the food assistance broken down by neighborhood center location. A total of 9,150 food boxes were provided for the 2,467 households served. These boxes contain 3 to 5 days food supply based on family size. Ogdensburg was the busiest center, providing 2,272 food boxes for the year. Potsdam was the second busiest with 2,130 boxes distributed. Our agency wants to thank St. Lawrence County residents for their support of our programs. During the 2019-2020 year, there were over 19,000 hours of volunteer time donated. Over 12,000 were donated to our neighborhood centers, and over 7,000 were donated to our Head Start program. Our 2019 agency audit was recently completed, and the CDP has approximately 6% administrative costs, so 94% of our budget is spent directly on providing programming and services to benefit the community. Thank you all, and please feel free to reach out if you have questions or would like additional information on our agency. Felicia Dumas. The second one is from Tony Kennedy. Good evening, my name is Tony Kennedy, and I'm an elected councilwoman for the town of Potsdam. I am also a registered nurse. I would like to be here in person, however, I am currently pregnant and am worried that many of the legislators have not taken this pandemic seriously, as evidenced by the comments made by several members of this legislature during the Finance Committee meeting last week. I am particularly disappointed in what was said by Ms. Curran, a nurse practitioner. As a fellow member of the healthcare community, she has a duty to protect the health and well-being of others. She, as well as Mr. Smithers and Mr. Akers, who serve on the Community Services Board and Public Health Board, made comments discouraging an executive order aimed at protecting members of our community from contracting a deadly virus and compared the use of basic safety measures to the Holocaust. It is absurd to have elected officials comparing safety measures to the genocide of over 6 million people when the current reporting system has generated nothing more than warning letters to individuals and businesses. Calling a reporting hotline unconstitutional is blatantly disingenuous when Ms. Curran at the same meeting was encouraging the use of reporting hotline for drug dealers. If people feel unsafe or there is a risk to public health, they should be encouraged to report those issues, be it drug dealing or public health violations, without being called Nazis. We're still very much in a pandemic. There were 20 new cases in the county over the weekend alone. 7 people in our community are currently hospitalized and there are 44 cases. It is dangerous to have our elected officials and those who are supposed to be leaders in our community help pushing what is clearly nothing more than a political propaganda. The point of safety measures and reporting is to prevent the sort of surge we saw here over the last weekend. Because if we don't do what we are supposed to do, all of our small businesses will have to shut down like they did last spring. The reporting hotline is meant to keep businesses compliant so we can keep business and our local economy open. And as a final point, as an elected official in Potsdam, I represent a synagogue and people of the Jewish faith. And after hearing such careless comparisons to the Holocaust, I publicly call on Ms. Kern and Mr. Smithers to apologize to the Jewish residents of our county. I also ask that everyone on this legislature take this pandemic seriously and encourage members of our community to do what is necessary to keep us all safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now is the time in our meeting. Yes,
I have one more.
you'll have one more? You told me you only had 2?
I know, it just came in.
Okay.
This is from David Duff. I am a registered voter living in the town of Macomb, St. Lawrence County. I am opposed to this resolution on funding mandate of enforcement of executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic. As in my opinion, it is nothing more than a partisan effort to appeal to those that feel their civic liberties are being unnecessarily constrained by public health mandates in the form of executive orders. I am of the opinion that most of us recognize the teaching that we are brothers keepers. I certainly expose that practice and assume you legislators do as well, given you are elected to represent us in the county's best interest and welfare. It is my opinion that until the governor put financial penalties in place for businesses that were ignoring the public health mandates to wear masks and practice social distancing by their customers, voluntary compliance was up to the individual and proprietor. Not until there were some teeth put into the mandate health guidelines did the public recognize that they had to wear a mask to get service. Now, grumbling or complying masks are prevalent. Resisting this effort with this resolution is counterproductive and serves no one but those feeling their unfettered rights trump the public health of the county. We are better than this, in my opinion. David Duff.
Thank you. Any more?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Now is the time for citizen participation. Any citizen wishing to address this board is asked to stand at the podium during the time that they address the board. The address will be limited to a time of 5 minutes. And when you start, please start off with your name, please. Is there anybody?
Can you both hear me?
It's fine.
Yeah, okay. I'm almost too tall for microphones. I've had the opportunity to meet several of you, Ms. Curran, Mr. Akers, Mr. Perkins, Mr. Arquette. To those who I have not yet had a chance to meet, my name is Anna Summer, and I am a resident of Canton. I'm also a business owner and a mother of 2. It was with great surprise that I read North Country Now's article about the October 26th Finance Committee meeting and the board's approval of a resolution addressing what Mr. Akers calls an unfunded mandate of enforcement of executive orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I was surprised for 2 reasons. First of all, that the principal concern about these executive orders is the hotline to which citizens can report violations, including not wearing masks in a business or gatherings in excess of 50 people. This hotline is characterized as deputizing people to rat out their neighbors. Now, deputize means to stand in for or serve as a proxy for someone with authority. So I called the hotline and I asked if I reported a COVID violation, would the state consider that sufficient evidence to fine someone for a violation, thereby making me a deputy of the state? The person I spoke with told me that it was merely the beginning of the process of gathering more information to see whether a fine could be issued or not. That doesn't sound like deputizing someone. Just like if I thought my neighbor was dealing drugs, I'd be able to call the police, and the police would investigate before finding or arresting my neighbor. And without this hotline, how would the state know if there are violations of the protocol that we all seem to agree keep us safe? When people start calling 911? Because that seems like a much worse outcome. The article surprised me secondly, because 2 legislators drew parallels between the hotline and the system that allowed people to turn Jews over to the Nazis. This is so incredibly damaging to the Holocaust and those victims. How is there any moral equivalency whatsoever between a hotline that could result in a fine of no more than $1,000 and a reporting system that resulted in the killing of 6 million people? This type of rhetoric minimizes the horrors of the Holocaust and ratchets up the opposition to public health measures that we know for a fact are saving lives. The irony there is rich. Leadership matters, and what I read in that article is politics, not leadership. You all have the choice to defend the lives of healthcare workers, defend the lives of grocery store workers, defend the lives of your neighbors and families. These are not mere abstractions. I am originally from Dodds County, Nebraska, which is about half the size of St. Lawrence County, but 1/10 of the population. There is no leadership in Nebraska to set norms around social distancing or mask wearing. And so I see friends and former classmates whom I love dearly and think are wonderful people who are very smart, going to volleyball and football games where none of the players and most of the fans are not wearing masks or social distancing. I see pictures of social gatherings where no one is wearing a mask or social distancing. The result of all of this is that despite having 1/10 of the population of St. Lawrence County, Dodds County has an equal number of deaths and 3 times the active cases per capita that we do. Being a leader is not easy. You will literally be saving lives, and I encourage you to choose that path over partisan gains. Finally, Mr. Fay, as your constituent, I urge you to vote against the resolution. I do not think the majority of your constituents support this resolution, and I hope you will pay attention to it. Thank you for your time this evening, and I will be leaving after public comment is over to minimize my social contact, but I look forward to seeing the outcome of your vote.
Thank you.
I too thank the legislature for this opportunity to speak. Some of you I know, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ginger Story Welch. I'm a resident of Pierpont. I'm a retired teacher of 37 years, and I'm grandmother of 10, for whom I try to make this world a better place. I would like to say ditto to all that Anna just said, and especially what she said about misusing the word Nazi. I have a friend who is a Holocaust survivor. She had relatives who died. Her father was in a camp for a very short period of time and never recovered from being there. Her mother miraculously got her father out of the camp and got the family out of Germany to come to America and came here. The Nazis were brutal. They tortured. They killed 6 million people, and 1 million of those were children. When we equate trivial things, more trivial things, to Nazism, we imply that Nazism was far more trivial than it is, and we dishonor those who suffered from this brutal regime. You should only use that word with great care and with the memory of those who suffered in mind. I would also like to read something that my conservative Mormon friend sent me in early July. It was written by his neighbor, Mr. Brent Strait of Ogden, Utah. Brent was described as being a very conservative Republican, very concerned about Second Amendment rights, a retired history teacher, that will show on what he writes. And like many of you in this room, he is an elected public servant. Here are his words. Is a requirement to wear a mask in public a violation of my freedoms? This past Wednesday, a wide array of faith leaders issued a statement urging the wearing of masks in public. One particular sentence from that letter struck me deeply. One cannot claim to love one's neighbors while deliberately putting them at risk. This simple statement contains all the elements of a good argument: the emotional element of love, the ethical standard of a moral choice, and the scientific logic that wearing a mask reduces the risk of COVID-19. On the other hand, the argument that the government cannot mandate the wearing of masks is based solely on an emotional and false definition of freedom. In the words of a popular and oft-used saying, "Your right to swing your arm ends where my nose begins." This principle applies to wearing masks in public. Much of the political philosophy on which our nation is founded comes from a philosopher by the name of John Locke. The philosophy of Locke rejected the idea that kings rule by divine right. Divine right was basically the idea that disobeying the king was to disobey God. Instead, Locke insisted that governments are created under a social contract to protect natural rights. He defined these natural rights as life, liberty, and property. He further stated that whenever a government did not protect those natural rights, then it is the right of people to overthrow that government. Both Locke and Thomas Hobbes also understood that when people created government, they gave up total freedom in exchange for security. Government must be strong enough to protect our natural rights, but not so strong as to completely destroy our individual freedoms. Finding that balance between a government with too little power and a government with too much power is why we must always be diligent. I do not agree with those that believe that mandates requiring the wearing of a mask during a pandemic is the first step towards totalitarianism. I would suggest that you now take a few minutes to reread the Declaration of Independence. The ideas and principles of the Declaration were so well understood that the opening line is, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." The preamble to the Constitution of the United States outlines 6 principles on which the Constitution is based. One of these 6 principles is to promote the general welfare. I would suggest that the requirement of wearing a mask in public could absolutely be considered in the best interest of the general welfare of our city, state, and nation. Promoting the general welfare has often required personal sacrifice. Any requirement to wear a mask in public pales in comparison to the many sacrifices of the past. I agree with Mr. Straight that a mask mandate is more about promoting the general welfare than a step towards totalitarianism. And a mask mandate is not a mandate without some kind of enforcement mechanism. Frankly, I'm relieved to go into local stores and see that the vast majority of people are following guidelines. I have not reported to this hotline, but I'm glad it's there. And obviously, what we are doing in New York is working compared to other states. It is silly to say that we are being deputized by being able to call this number. If we were deputized, we'd be able to be handing out the warnings and fines. And citizens can report problems to authorities. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I would respectfully urge my legislature, Rick Perkins, to please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the presentation of resolutions at this time. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution adopting New York State local retirement legislation, Chapter 542, laws of 2015, to provide for the crediting of service performed by a deputy sheriff enrolled in Article 14B of the Retirement and Social Security laws, move for its adoption.
Your second by Mr. excuse me, by Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Carol L. Poole, Oral, for cleaning services at the district offices of probation, fund and motor vehicles, emergency services, and community services located at Harrogate Commons in the state of New York and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Julie L. Wallace, LCSW, for counseling services for the probation department and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran and Mr. Sheridan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Department of Transportation for public transportation services and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran, Mr. Akers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Volunteer Transportation Center Incorporated to provide mobility management services in St. Lawrence County and move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Mr. Reagan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Center for Tech and Civic Life for the COVID-19 response grant and to modify the 2020 budget for the Board of Elections and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran and Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Denisha?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
Hay?
Yes.
Haggard?
Yes.
Piacco?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
Curran?
Yes.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
Yes.
Smithers?
Yes.
15 yes.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for the Office of Emergency Services for the fiscal year 19 PSAT grant, move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
Hay?
Yes.
Haggard?
Yes.
Piacco?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
Curran? Yes. Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
Yes.
Smithers?
Yes.
Denisha?
Yes.
15 yes.
The resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for the Office of Emergency Services for the fiscal year 19 SICG grant, move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran, Mr. Sheridan. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Akers?
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Hager,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran. Yes. Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
15 yes.
The resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a one-year extension to the New York State Division of Homeland Security and the Emergency Services Office of Interoperable and Emergency Communications for fiscal year 18 statewide interoperable communications formula grant. Move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Monroe County for morgue and laboratory services, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Smithers, Ms. Curran, Mr. Fay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital and Twin Tier Pathology for morgue and laboratory services, and I move for its
Is
adoption.
there a second? By Mr. Forsythe, Ms. Curran. Mr. Reagan, you have your hand up? And Mr. Reagan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for social services for software, equipment, and office supplies for the Home Energy Assistance Program HEAP, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Excuse me, roll call, please.
Fay,
Yes.
Hager,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran. Yes. Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
15 yes.
The resolution is carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to approve issuing a request for proposal RFP for an electronic health record and community services, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Mr. Akers, Mr. Burke, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for community services for funding from Research Foundation for Mental Hygiene, RFMH, Oasis, New York State Opioid Response Grant. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Forsythe and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hager,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran. Yes. Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan.
Yes.
Smithers.
Yes.
Denisha.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Akers.
Yes.
Hay.
Yes.
15 yes.
The resolution is carried. Mr. Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to award and sign contracts for Browns Bridge Road over Racket River, Town of Pierpont, bin number 322-1560, bin number 775380. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe, Mr. Denisha, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Mr. Burke. I
Mr.
abstain.
Burke?
No.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I
Arquette
abstain
abstains?
due to my
Thank you.
employment.
thank you. That's noted. Okay. Back to the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Gary Bowich, Esquire, for legal services related to environmental matters. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution opposing the unfunded mandate of enforcement of the executive orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic and calling upon the governor of the state of New York to remove the threat of loss of state aid conditioned on enforcement. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Mr. Smithers. Mr. Smithers first.
I'd just like to clarify, I don't have a problem with the pillars of safety that were presented, but I do have a problem with the idea of turning in somebody else for not following the rules.
Thank you. Ms. Curran.
So for me, it wasn't an issue of whether or not to wear a mask. I obviously wear a mask. I would tell my patients, wear a mask, wash your hands, don't go around a bunch of people. I think that's reasonable. The problem I have is.
Ms. Curran, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're discussing a resolution that is sort of removed from what you're talking about. I understand that you're trying to connect the two, but I would appreciate it if you would confine your remarks and your thoughts to the executive orders and the topic of the resolution.
I was one word from it. Mayor, I just think that finding people is the problem. We have enough division here in our state and pretty much around the country that pitting one neighbor against another and encouraging people to turn each other in is a bad start at all of this.
Thank you. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we get a roll call vote on this, this resolution, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm wondering what actual cost has this been to us? You know, it's a huge job to attempt to keep people safe from COVID. And I guess, you know, the way it's worded, opposing the unfunded mandate of enforcement, what cost have we incurred?
Anybody want to answer that? I think what it is, John, if I can respond, and I think what it is that constitutionally, it's the Senate and the Assembly that pass the budgets. Once the budget is passed, it's sort of set in stone. And there is a feeling or a notice that the governor arbitrarily cannot do what he proposes to do with respect to withholding money that has been appropriated by the legislature. That's my take on it. Anyone else? Mr. Akers.
So I basically find it hard to talk about this resolution without including the three individuals, which we heard from tonight from the public. David Duff, Ginger Welch, and Anna Summers. They all mentioned about the wearing of the mask. There's nothing in this about the wearing of the mask in the 5 pillars. And I think it's important to remember that apparently, you're talking about the Holocaust, apparently Ms. Curran and Mr. Smithers are not highly woke enough that they can actually talk about this.
Mr. Akers, you're getting a little off topic too.
Well, let me just clarify, Mr. Chairman, and how this actually executive order came about was a direct quote from the governor. And it was basically in relationship to the Orthodox Jews of the Hasidic community in Brooklyn. And the governor explained that this is not a lack of public education. This is a lack of enforcement. And this is basically the roots of how this executive order came about. Like, okay, you're not going to follow. This is what the education is. We're going to make you do this. And so, as you know from this, that the state police are excluded from the enforcement of this. Well, why is that? So the burden becomes on our sheriffs and our local officials, public health, community services, or whoever, to investigate these claims. You heard Anna Summers said that she called the number. Well, she said, well, that's not, the investigation. But the answer was, that's the beginning of the process. Well, what's the beginning of the process? The process is actually sending somebody out, either using resources from public health or community services to find out if something actually had occurred. That is part of the problem of this. So to talk about New York doing a great job. New York has over 1,700 people per million that have died in the United States. We are the highest state. We're over 25% of the actual deaths. So when New York is higher than Texas and Florida combined in their number of people that have died per million, I don't think that New York State has done a great job. And also the amount of deaths, which are yet to be determined, basically on the mandate that COVID patients recovering from the hospitals be sent to our nursing homes. We know at least 6,500 people that have died. So that's not a great job in mine. So this mandate, this unfunded mandate, has true cause in it. And as we move into this, unless this executive order is taken back, we will have cause. That's why I support this resolution.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address this resolution? Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Chairman, I think a lot of people are missing the real point of this resolution, which says that the governor, we are opposed to the governor threatening to cut local government by up to 20%. And I think that since this money has been appropriated by the state legislature, that the idea of threatening local governments and county governments with cuts as massive as 20% is the real point of this resolution. And those who vote against it are favoring this cut of 20% of our towns, villages, and county governments. I'm against these kinds of arbitrary cuts, especially during a time of pandemic when we need local and state government to be working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Ms. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been here for a few months. I have never heard anyone say, oh, gee, I love unfunded mandates. We have a lot of them. We still don't have an answer to Mr. Burke's question, which was, what has it cost us? Have we had to pay overtime to law enforcement to enforce them? And on behalf of the 5 families who tonight may have a different view of mandates and the rules that we've had to follow to keep each other safe, I will be voting no. I consider this political grandstanding. Thank you.
Ms. Terminelli.
I withdraw. Mrs. Haggard covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comment? Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The state currently has 9 unfunded mandates that account for 90% of our budget. And we're constantly worried about the money from the state and when we're going to get the revenues, which sometimes we don't get. But specifically the 6 whereas from the bottom, whereas the governor has specifically stated that if New York does not receive federal funding and a federal coronavirus stimulus bill, local government aid will be reduced by 20%. That right there is why I am supporting this resolution.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Piacco,
No.
Burke,
No.
Arquette,
No.
Terminelli,
No.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
No.
Haggard,
No.
9 yes, 6 no.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution supporting Senate Bill S 2047 and Assembly Bill A 6461, proposing amendments to Section 4 and Section 5A of Article 3 of the Constitution in relation to the number of senators and the apportionment of Senate districts. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe, Mr. Smithers, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Can you clear that so I can see if there's any hands up? Mr. Burke.
I won't be supporting this. There's no clear evidence in my mind that this resolution would actually enhance our representation here in St. Lawrence County. Won't rehash all the things we talked about in committee, but we have 3 state senators, and we don't know what it would look like if this were enacted. So I'm certainly not going to support something that I don't know would be good for the county.
Anyone else? Mr. Akers.
There is clear evidence. The clear evidence is that right now, we have 32 senators that reside in the New York City urban area. Their interests are quite different than the rest of the state, other than in the urban centers, say Buffalo, Syracuse, or Albany. We do have 3 senators right now. They do a good job for us. The North Country is represented, as actually Dr. Williams talked about, the North Country is 7 different counties. And I believe there are other rural counties across the state that their interests align with the North Country. This would be like the federalist system, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Smithers.
Yeah, I'd like to call your attention to the map of New York State that's on Google Drive. That was put there this afternoon. It shows how clearly our representatives are skewed toward the metropolitan areas and how underrepresented we are in rural communities.
Thank you, Mr. Smithers. Ms. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for a roll call vote on this.
Anyone else wish to speak to the resolution? Anyone that hasn't spoken? Mr. Akers.
I also support a roll call. I'd like it in the record for those that just would support North Country interests.
Okay. If there is no one else that wishes to speak to the resolution, a roll call, please.
Burke,
No.
Arquette. No. Terminelli,
No.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan.
Yes.
Smithers.
Yes.
Denisha.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Akers.
Yes.
Bay.
Yes.
Haggard.
No.
Piaco.
No.
10 yes, 5 no.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Akers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer a resolution adopting an amended St. Lawrence County Title VI plan and authorizing the chair to sign the plan and move this resolution.
I think you skipped one.
Oops. All right. Excuse me.
Number 19.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer the resolution to designate the St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce as the St. Lawrence County Tourism Promotion Agent and authorizing the chair to sign the 2021-2023 contract. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Forsyth, Ms. Curran, Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution adopting an amended St. Lawrence County Title VI plan and authorizing the chair to sign the plan. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with the city of Ogdensburg for hazmat team services. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsyth and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Forsyth, would you present the next resolution, please?
Mr. Chair, I offer a resolution authorizing filling of vacancies and modifying the 2020 budget for the Office for the Aging. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Sharon. Now that it's on the table, I would like to offer an amendment to this resolution. It was originally discussed back in the October services meeting, and it's for the fifth attorney in the Department of Social Services. So on the list of vacancies, I would move to or offer a motion to include under the department unit heading, Social Services /legal. The title of the position is attorney, and it's a new position. The position number is 818000004. It is a full-time position. It is a permanent position, and the fill is immediate. Is there a second to that by Mr. Sheridan and Mr. Denisha? Is there any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Forsyth.
Is there a cost associated with this and the county cost?
The cost that I have is a net county cost of $17,987. The salary, the base salary for the position is $63,234.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing the amendment to the resolution. I think there is another cost, and the cost is certainly the welfare of our children and families if we don't fill the item. So I commend you for including it, and it's certainly much needed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Hager.
With an abundance of caution, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse from this vote. Thank you.
So noted. Anyone else? Seeing none, roll call, please. Oh, excuse me. We didn't vote on the amendment, did we?
Correct.
We need to vote on the amendment now, excuse me. So unless there is any further discussion, We'll vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now to the amended resolution. Roll call, please.
Barclay,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
I recuse.
Piaco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
14 yes, 1 recuse.
The resolution is carried. Mr. Akers, would you present the next resolution, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution for the adoption of the 2021 budget. I move this resolution.
There's a second. Second by Mr. Fay, Mr. Forsythe, Mr. Denisha, Ms. Curran, Mr. Arquette, Mr. Perkins, and Mr. Sheridan. Any discussion? Mr. Akers.
I want to commend Ruth Doyle, the department heads, her budget team for putting together an excellent budget. It does have a slight tax reduction, which is also very important to me. The fact that we're actually able to do this in this year of the COVID is really kind of unexpected. And I just wanted to praise you and your staff for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo Mr. Akers' remarks that, we continue to ask Ruth, Dylan, all of our staff to tighten your belt every year. And every year you don't let us down and you don't let the taxpayers of St. Lawrence County down. So thank you all for all of your efforts.
Anyone else? Mr. Reagan.
I'd just like to echo those comments and point out that during a very, very difficult year, the county was able to avoid any massive layoffs, any massive furloughs, any massive cuts of our personnel. This legislature has shown this past year and in this budget that we've been loyal to our county employees. We have done our best to work with them and help make it possible for our citizens to receive the services that they need. And I think this budget reflects that, and the actions of this board over the past year, despite the challenges that we faced, have shown our commitment to continuing to provide services despite this extraordinary year.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Anyone else? Seeing none, roll call, please. Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd just like to reiterate what everybody has said before me. This has been a lot of work. Hats off to all the members included here. This is another year that we have reduced the taxes for the individuals. It'd be nice if the towns, villages, and schools could actually follow our lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Piaco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
15 yes.
The resolution passes and the budget is approved. Thank you. Moving along, Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with the Development Authority of the North Country for broadband survey assessment and modifying the 2020 budget for the County Administrator's Office. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Forsyth. Any discussion? Mr. Fay.
Yes. I spent a little time looking at the Development Authority of the North Country. It was created in 1985 by legislation. And the legislation was passed at this point in time, said the authority operates as a revenue-based public benefit corporation, independent of state operational funding. So when it was created by the state, there's no funding involved with it at all. So it's a revenue-based infrastructure facility, includes water, wastewater distribution, extensive fiber optic network, and regional landfills. And so I went a little further, and it's looked at DANK to see what they had in their financial statements. DANK has net assets of about $169 million as of last year, March 31st, 2019. Between investments and cash they had on hand was $46 million. Looking at that, I'm saying, since they're revenue-based, are we going to pick up half the cost of the survey they're going to do to generate revenue for DANK? Don't get me wrong, this is important for our county also, but I feel that this is DANK's responsibility to fund the whole $76,500, not putting half the load for the survey on St. Lawrence County. So consequently, I understand the fiber optics are awful important for our county, but I also think it's DANK's responsibility to fund it all.
Anyone else? Mr. Arquette and then Ms. Terminelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did a little research after the presentation last week, and I agree with Mr. Fay, not only on the level of funding that DANK has before them, but also that I believe that these types of surveys have been done by different entities here in St. Lawrence County. So I just assume that we're not duplicative of services or surveys that have already been taken by, I believe organizations like BOCES have done this type of survey already. So I won't be supporting the resolution tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Terminelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Broadband is definitely something that we need access to for our students, for our healthcare workers, for our economy, and for infrastructure. I definitely support expanding access to broadband for everybody. May I ask a question of, if Jason is on from planning, may I ask a question of him?
Certainly.
I'm
Mr.
just wondering,
Fodenhauer.
Mr. Fodenhauer, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I just am wondering if this is information that planning has already gathered, and I understand the importance of gathering it so that we have it compiled in the interest of applying for grants. Is this information that the planning department already has compiled or could compile without a cost, an additional cost of the $38,000? Or is it an investment worth making with DANK to get this information to use for grant purposes?
A couple elements to your question, Ms. Terminelli. We do not have that information at present. The planning office has not done any survey to the extent that the DANK survey would be. Could we do it? I would have to really see the full extent of what DANK was looking at and what they would be securing for information before I could really answer whether or not we could do it. I'm sorry, I can't give you more than that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Forsythe and then Mr. Perkins.
Yeah, I respect Dan and all that have talked. Ruth, we did a program with Anchors Solid Waste a couple of years, helped us buy some equipment. How much did they contribute?
We did, they split in half the equipment of 700,000, I believe it was.
Okay,
We split
so
over
they
2 years.
partnered with us before. In order to get these grants that they're gonna go out and seek, we gotta have a current survey done. And they know, they have the expertise to do it. I support funding it. Not so much, Lisbon's pretty much served. There's some spots that are a little sketchy, my house, I guess, but there's a lot of places that aren't, you know. Messina and Canton may not have to worry about it, but Russell, DeGrasse, fine. Those little areas that are underserved or unserved, that's what I'd like to see accomplished, so I'll support this.
Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had a couple groups come before us, at least one that have presented, and I'm not sure if it was Slick or who it was at the time, but it had all the information. They were looking for grants. It showed who had what territories. At the time, there was Time Warner involved. So I know that information is out there, and it was all grant-based. So I can't see redoing another survey when that information should be available somewhere. Thank you.
Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Chairman, I would simply point out that the Development Authority of the North Country is not required to assist us in obtaining broadband services to our rural areas, but they are offering to do this, and they are offering to assist us with a critical need that stretches across St. Lawrence County in many rural pockets. And as much as, you know, people might like to think that there is all this information out there, ask the people out there who don't have service whether it's doing them any good. I think the Development Authority of the North Country deserves a great deal of credit for stepping forward to address what is a real need for many of our families and businesses, and to help us in our efforts to bring new business and additional families to come live in our area. One of the critical decisions that families and businesses make when they move into rural areas is whether or not there is access to broadband. And if we are serious about bringing business and bringing families back to St. Lawrence County, this is a critical first step. And I would urge everyone to get behind and appreciate the fact that the Development Authority of the North Country is going to bat for us to provide a service that is not available for many of our rural families. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haggard, and then Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To echo what Legislator Terminelli said, it's critical, and also what Mr. Reagan said, it is critical that we have broadband available, not just for students, for business, for telehealth. But I'm a little bit removed from the school system. My understanding is they had to do a survey and find out in each community who had broadband and who didn't when schools went online. So I'm going to put out there that there is information available that's relatively current information as of this spring. And anyone who certainly, Legislator Fiacco or Legislator Terminelli can correct me since they are more connected to the schools right now, but that information is available.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
I don't think anybody questions the intent and the need for broadband in every community in our county. I guess the question boils down to, is the information there? Is the, and again, I'm not disputing what anybody has said. I'd feel a lot better if we tabled it and ask our IT department and planning department to make a recommendation to us to take a look at it, and so that we're not guessing whether this is the right move for us. Perhaps there's a better way. I mean, I certainly respect DANK. I think that they're of high integrity, and perhaps they are the best choice. But again, I'd feel better hearing that from people in our organization who could ask the right questions and make a recommendation to us.
I second the table.
No, he didn't make the motion. He said
Oh.
if somebody did. Would you like to make it?
I believe
I'll
he
be
made.
glad.
Fairquest?
I believe he made the motion, but if you see it differently, then I'll make the.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Arquette's motion? By Mr. Burke and Ms. Terminelli. All in favor of tabling the resolution?
No.
Please raise your hand if you're in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The resolution is tabled. Until when, Mr. Arquette?
Until that information can be resolved. What type of timeframes did DANK give us as far as needing this information or needing to begin?
As I recall, they wanted to get it done ASAP, but I don't know what kind of time constraints they're under. They're looking at contracting with an entity that does this kind of work. They're not going to do it themselves. So I don't know.
About till finance.
Yeah. Now, who do you want to do this? The planning department?
I believe that would be our department that would have the best skill set to.
And Mr. Fotenhauer, is that something that the planning department could do? Consistent with whatever else you have going?
We aim to please in the planning office, so we certainly can look into it. We do not have that expertise immediately in-house. We certainly have some very talented individuals on our staff that have experience in the GIS world, and perhaps that extends to broadband, but I really would look to partner with IT and maybe some other county departments that might have some more experience with this. So I think it would be a collective effort from planning and other departments here to see what we could find out. I think our first step would be talking, just seeing what DANK proposed and getting a little bit more information about what is being suggested.
Would you include IT in that then?
If I could follow up, just for clarification purposes, we're not asking for our planning department to perform the survey. I believe that we're asking our planning department to determine if that information already exists here in the county. The information of which the survey would provide.
Right, understood. Okay, we certainly can look into that.
Okay.
Thanks.
We're square. Mr. Denisian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, if we need more information, that's good. But I think one of the things that we're missing is that the resolution in the third paragraph speaks to it'll provide documentation and GIS mapping of the facilities. Right now, and I know it was communicated to us during the presentation that you've got all the different companies. You've got Slick and Verizon, and what have you, they have the information, but they are not willing to share it with anyone. So what this resolution seeks to do is to pull all the information together, do the GIS mapping, so that we will actually know what we've got, and it won't be in half a dozen different places with folks that are not willing to share it with anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Denisha. The resolution is tabled. Mr. Fay.
I just had one thing. When I presented this, I presented it with the hopes that Dane would pick up the tab. I think no question of the need whatsoever. I think they're in a financial position as basically a public benefit corporation that, from looking at their financial statements, I think they're certainly capable of paying for them survey themselves.
Okay. Mr. Fotenhauer, you've got what tabling is hoping to accomplish. I would much prefer to see this come back at one of our either operations or services. I can't imagine that it's going to, take a great deal of time or effort to get that information. It's pretty narrowly, narrow parameters. So if you could do that, we'd appreciate it.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Mr. Akers.
My recollection is that it was very time sensitive. I think Lewis County is actually in contract now. So really, actually, all Mr. Fotenhauer has to do is call Dank and say, you pick up the tab. Be over just that so quickly.
He might take your advice. Okay, Jefferson County was not yet on board either. So, okay, moving along, Mr. Akers, the next resolution is a tabled resolution. We need a motion to take it off the floor by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Forsythe and Mr. Akers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of taking this resolution off the table?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. It is off the table. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to speak to the blanks and fill those in?
I will.
Okay.
If you would, if you would just restate the resolution, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a comprehensive opioid, stimulant, and substance abuse site-based program grant and modifying the 2020 budget for community services. I move this resolution.
Okay, the resolution has already been moved. It's back on the table and it's been seconded. What needs to be done now is to fill in the blanks here, so to speak. And for the first blank and the now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Legislators authorizes the acceptance of the comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse site-based program and awards St. Lawrence Health Services to administer the program for St. Lawrence County. And be it further resolved that the Treasurer's Office is authorized to modify the 2020 budget for community service for the $900,000 to provide St. Lawrence Health Systems with the necessary funding to meet the deliverables as described in the grant as follows. And those following grant amounts are increase of revenue, $900,000. And under increase in appropriations to the Seaway Valley Prevention Council, $145,455. To Grace House, $67,500. And to the OTP, or the Opioid Treatment Program, $687,045. The total of those three items is the same as the increase in revenue, $900,000. Is there any discussion on this? Mr. Burke.
The grant specifies that the Community Services Board, and I think it may have specified the one of the awards that we just talked about, the Seaway Valley Prevention Council, that they weigh in on the recommendation. And I know that there were several meetings that the Community Services Board had, and the problem with their meetings, there was no public announcement of the meetings. So as we talk about this huge amount of money, which as soon as we accept it, it's taxpayer money. And as we talk about this huge influx of the grant, the public, and I would say myself included and the rest of the legislators, really don't know what the discussion entailed, because it was done without public involvement. And it was done, at least several of the meetings were done, the discussions were done in executive session. And I contacted the open meetings office in Albany just to find out whether or not that was appropriate. And they essentially said it wasn't executive session material, and that the notification pertains to the Community Services Board as it does to our board. We must notify the public so that they can hear the discussion, that there is transparency. And when that doesn't happen, I guess it's certainly of concern to me. I mean, I realize the challenges that the chair has had, and I know the chair and the vice chair both changed their positions of support, and but the need for transparency, the need to comply with the open meeting law is really crucial, because we're talking huge amounts of taxpayer money. The process needs to be transparent, and as we look at the different entities, I for one would like to know what the pros and cons of each of their decisions of each of the agencies were, and what metrics they most recently used in determining who should receive the grant. And I certainly know that the mayor of Messina weighed in on the location, and that apparently didn't carry any weight. But I also can't help but wonder what particular aspects of each of the agencies they looked at. When it comes, I mean, I've heard some of our members say, well, it seems to be a good fit. Our county, to me, what's a good fit is the $600,000. That's a good fit, and our county clinics are interconnected with public health, mental health, impaired driver program, single point of entry, the courts, probation, jail, and DSS. That's who we're interconnected with. Now, I realize that St. Lawrence Health System is certainly a reputable organization, but as we look at what the deciding points were, it's critical that process be transparent. We shouldn't have to guess at what the attributes of each agency was, and and again, the meetings, at least to the best of my knowledge, were not legal meetings. They were illegal. They didn't comply. And I think if we without that public scrutiny, it's first, it's a violation of the law, but it's an injustice to our public who has the right to know. Why was the decision made to favor one over the other? And maybe we could all rest comfortably if we knew the rationale.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Did you get a formal ruling from the open meetings people?
Well, Joe, I don't know what you mean by formal. I called.
Well, I would mean something in writing that we can see, John.
Oh, no, but I'll tell you what I would encourage. I would encourage maybe Steve to give them a call. I spoke with Ms. O'Neill in that office, and I explained to her that the Community Services Board, she asked what type of board it was, and I told her that it was a board that was outlined in mental hygiene law. And she said, well, then the answer is easy. She said they're bound by the same rules of open meeting law as we are. And then I asked about the executive session, and she told me that she didn't think that was executive session material. I'm not. I'd be more than happy to have Steve retrace the tracks and have him report back to you. I didn't ask for anything in writing. I did identify myself as a county legislator, and that's what she told me.
Okay, thank you. One other question, if I may. You mentioned that the chair and the vice chair changed their positions. I assume you mean the chair and vice chair of the CSB, not the chair of the board.
Yeah.
All right.
I did mean the chair and the vice chair of the Community Services Board.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Akers.
I think we need to move ahead on this. Legislator Curran pointed out, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, that on a weekend we had 4 opioid deaths, 3 on the reservation and 1 in Messina. Ruth, do you know, I don't think it was last year, but the year before we lost 17 people, at least recorded 17 people as overdoses. I think last year was actually down a bit, but it was still 10 or 11. Do you recall those numbers?
No, but I can get them for you.
So anyway, we have, and I think it was pointed out that we have a huge heroin and methamphetamine problem here. And I think that we've delayed long enough that we need to move ahead so that the entities, St. Lawrence Health Systems, can move ahead with plans. Now there's money there. I think they were ready to move ahead when the SOAR monies were there of $275,000, but the clock ran out on that, and that money was expended by the county. So I prefer not to delay this matter any longer. I think we need to move ahead, and for our constituents, for those that are suffering from addiction.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Ms. Curran.
We've had 2 more people that have passed since that meeting. 2 young people that have passed because they had been clean for some time and then used again and died. And the one thing that the parents ask is, can you help us? Can you get help for our children in the community? And I can't say that I want to wait longer to research more things when this is what we need.
Thank you. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could not have more sympathy towards the casualties of this opioid battle that's going on. And I also agree that we need to move forward, but I have no reason in the world, nor do I doubt Mr. Burke's research. I don't doubt the responses that came from open government. We all, as elected officials, are obliged to obey open government laws, Robert rules, all different kinds of oversight. And I do not know how, with this question being posed by Mr. Burke or anybody who posed that same concern, how we as a body can move forward without some kind of legal guidance.
Ms. Hager.
I don't think it's a question of whether we need this. We all know we need it. I would never be opposed to that. I do, although, care about our constituents having a say or at least knowing what we're doing. And I do like to be on the right side of the law.
Anybody that hasn't spoken yet wish to speak? Mr. Akers, you already spoke.
I have, yeah.
Okay, who had their, okay, Mr. Forsythe.
I just asked the county attorney, what's his feelings on
Like to weigh in?
Can.
Please do.
That's everyone's preference. I can indicate that I was actually a part of the meeting with the Community Services Board as the county attorney, and I act as legal advisor to all of the advisory boards as well as to the Board of Legislators and any department head that derives their compensation from general appropriations annually. I will note that at the onset, there was a question form that there are 13 capable seats being filled at that board. There were, at the time of vote, there were actually 10 people present. The initial vote that took place at the first meeting was a 6-4 vote. That I advised the board, based on that vote, that it was once again an invalid vote. That during the course of the meeting, an 11th member joined the meeting. The question was posed to the 11th member as to whether or not the 11th member wished to vote in favor of St. Lawrence Health Systems or the Kenton community or the county's community services clinics. And that 11th member cast a vote in favor of St. Lawrence Health Systems, making the vote 7-4. I am not aware of what notice requirement was made. However, as Mr. Burke has rightfully pointed out, as a governmental board, regardless of whether or not they're under the mental hygiene law, they are still a governmental board comprised of appointees of this board. As a governmental board, they are so bound by the public officers law. With respect to attendance in public, Executive Order 202.01, which was most recently extended by 202.68, which does not expire until November 4th, has suspended the requirement that the meeting actually be held in person, can be held electronically. However, that has not suspended the provisions associated with notice requirement, which is under Public Officers Law, Section 104. Public Officers Law, Section 104 requires that notice if the meeting is to be scheduled at least a week in advance, that notice be provided on a 3-day period. However, if the meeting is of an emergent circumstance, that the meeting itself may have notice that is deemed as, by the entity, as reasonable as possible. So the term reasonable is a very broad and ambiguous term. Any type of notice has actually been deemed to be reasonable, but once again, that's contingent on whether or not notice actually occurred. A question that I do not know, or an answer I do not know. I can tell that the vote itself appeared to be legitimate, but if no notice was provided, then technically the meeting would be in violation of the open meetings law itself. But I can tell you that the vote that I was present for ultimately was a 7-4 vote in favor of St. Lawrence Health System. I don't know if that was clear enough.
Never a short answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burke. Okay, Mr. Sheridan, you haven't spoken, go ahead.
Could I ask a question of the attorney?
Certainly.
Is this board under an obligation to follow the community services direction on this and their vote and what their wishes are?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an interesting question. Traditionally, under the law, the Community Services Board, as an appointee of this board, is bound by the determinations made by this board. So this board would get to decide who to award a contract, especially on subrecipient agreement for federal funds where the county would act as a pass-through agency. In this situation, however, the Community Services Board grant application, which was submitted to the federal government to secure the funding, indicated that the Community Services Board would act as the entity, upon the advice and consent of Seaway Valley Prevention Council, as the selecting entity for applications that would be submitted for operation of the OTP. So, because the federal funding was conditioned on the application said that it would be selected by the Community Services Board upon submissions that were essentially solicited from the providers in the area. It does appear that in order to be consistent with the terms of the grant application, the Community Services Board would make the selection. This board would confirm that selection. The only other option that this board theoretically has from a legal perspective, and it does not sound like there is any interest to do this, would be to reject the grant altogether. But having chosen to keep the grant, the option is to select the entity that the Community Services Board has voted.
Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, if I could direct my question to the county attorney.
Certainly.
So if we were to move forward on a vote, whether the vote was for or against, what potential recourse could be brought against us by perhaps, for example, one of the other two agencies that we're buying for this work?
Sure. If I may.
You may.
There are several different actions that theoretically could be brought, Mr. Arquette, although I could tell you the one that I would find the most successful would be to challenge the legitimacy of the vote taken by the Community Services Board, which this board relied upon. That would be typically in the form of a writ of mandamus or an Article 78, challenging the action of the board. I will tell you just functionally, the solution most likely recommended by any court that would have to deal with it would be that the Community Services Board just reconvene upon proper notice and hold a vote. So the likelihood of success on the merits of destroying the vote or destroying the award is probably quite slim. The more likely occurrence would be to just delay the actual award. That being said, I have seen situations where a violation of the open meetings law, specifically the notice requirement, has literally resulted in the proverbial slap on the hand, where the court has said, yeah, you shouldn't have done it, don't do it again, but they haven't invalidated the action taken while at the meeting. So I can't definitively state what the court would do with an action, but one of the other parties could theoretically challenge on that basis.
Thank you.
I want to agree with the urgency outlined by Kevin and Rita. There is an urgency. As a matter of fact, we've had 34 overdoses so far this year. Last year, we had approximately one per month. This year, we've had 11 deaths and the possibility of 4 more waiting toxicology reports. So it's the urgency is great, and which is all the more reason that we need to have some questions answered. I mean, I'd love to know if St. Lawrence Health Systems is the chosen one, how soon could they be up and running? I mean, because time is of the essence. Lives are in the mix here, and the ability to be fully functional, to have a space, to have a floor plan outlined, to get the approvals needed. Time is of the essence. Is anybody on our board aware of any timeline? I mean, I know with the county, we could probably be up and running in 3 months. Now, does anybody know the timeline? Is it going to take St. Lawrence Health Systems a year? I mean, these are very important questions that need to be asked, and we need to have answers to them so that the public has an understanding of what went into the decision making. And we don't have that. And it's an affront. It's an affront to our public. They have the right to know. And I'm really concerned that a lot of the factors, a lot of the very important factors, such as readiness to implement, haven't even been considered.
Just like to point something out, that in a full board meeting, a legislator gets, as I told John one night, 2 cracks at the apple. We've all gone past that, okay? I realize how important this is, so I haven't interrupted, but this can't go on all night. We've got a situation in front of us. I think everybody has agreed that, I don't want to say speed is of the essence, but it's important that we act on this one way or the other. I think after hearing the county attorney's response, that even if there was a problem with the notification of the meeting to cast a vote, if it were upheld by if it were dismissed by a Supreme Court judge, that the county attorney is absolutely right, at least with my limited knowledge of the law, that it would go back, they'd be told to have another meeting, to do it with proper notice, and probably things wouldn't change. I think too, that all 3 of those entities presented in public forum here in front of us. All of us were there. I don't know if anybody was absent that night, so I can't say all of us. But most of, at least a quorum of the legislature was there. They heard everything. You had all kinds of time to ask questions about how long is it going to take you to get ready, what your plans are, you know, those kinds of things. So I think the public, if they were tuned in, and that would have been their only option unless they wanted to go to a meeting, they would have been as informed as we are. So what I'd like to say is I'm willing to go one more round if need be of people that want to speak. And then we're going to have a vote one way or the other, unless something happens. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer an amendment to the resolution to accept the comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse grant without identifying a provider.
Is there a second? Yeah, Mr. Burke, second. Any discussion as to the amendment? Mr. Akers.
I'm against this delay. When I spoke earlier about the numbers, the 17, I was referring actually to deaths, not the actual overdoses. These presentations have not changed. I was there for the first one, which the total community services board that was present all voted St. Lawrence Health Systems as first place. 2 actually tied the county with it. One of those 2 was a county employee. In this next round of the 4 votes was also a county employee voted no, which probably that individual probably should have abstained and should have been out of the vote. But I think the change, there was some concerns in the first go around with the Community Services Board about siloing and how big was St. Lawrence Health Systems. But the determination was made by consensus of the board that they had the most surrounding services that would be available. Detox, care for pregnant moms, and mental facilities or mental counseling, everything that was available. So the only reason that it came before us, the legislative body, because the determination was made, first of all, they didn't come out of executive session and vote. So that was a Robert's rules. That was the first thing. And then the other determination was that because this money was passing through the legislative body, that's why the presentations had to come before us. And that's why the legislators had to decide. Then the grant is awarded and the grant is obtained. So now, because it actually involves the Grace House, Seaway Prevention, and others, that determination had to be made by the Community Services Board. I think that changes were made actually in some votes, particularly John's reference, and I don't know this to be fact, but was the basically about the readiness to go. St. Lawrence Health Systems was requesting initially, I think, $275,000, which was roughly the SOAR monies that was available. St. Joseph's was, if you guys don't get the 900,000, we're not moving off the ground. So there's a big difference. And like I said, the timeline, the community services, if they didn't use that SOAR money, that basically they were going to lose it. And that's how the money went away. And so the other thing I think was that these members that had changed their votes looked at the layoffs that St. Lawrence Health Systems were doing. Well, Claxton's laying off people too. They were reacting to the economics on the ground. People are not going in for elective surgeries. Maybe they need a knee surgery or a knee replacement. I've been waiting for this COVID thing to subside. So the best place to catch COVID is one of them is in our hospitals or opportunities for mingling with those that are sick. So the last meeting, which I attended, the county attorney was present to guide them. They wanted to do the right thing. It was a 7-4 vote. I think that we've delayed this. I'm not in favor of this amendment whatsoever. It's been voted on twice now by the Community Services Board, 3 times in the affirmative, that St. Lawrence Health Systems was the best, that could offer the best services for those that are addicted to substances. So I'm totally against, and I'll be voting against this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to the amendment? Ms. Haggard?
It's not to the amendment, it's to the previous conversation, Mr. Chair.
Well, we are talking about the amendment right now. So if you don't want to speak to the amendment, could you hold off until we get back to the original resolution?
Certainly.
Thank you. Anybody else that hasn't spoken this round? Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
Just to clarify, you're right. We all heard the presentations. The question with the amendment is we haven't been privy to the discussion of the Community Services Board members that made the decision. That's the issue at stake here, and that's why there's a request. Listen, they may go back and they may vote the same way, but hopefully when they do it, it will be open to the public so that we can hear the deliberations. I for one am not looking to delay any implementation of this program, but I am looking for transparency for our public. It's their right to know how the members of the board decided to make the decision. So I certainly will support this amendment, and it needs to be done right. It's not a matter of them presenting to the board. Yeah, we all know that. We all heard them. It's a matter of being privy to the deliberations that belongs to the public view.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Anyone else? All in favor of the amendment to the resolution, which would allow for the acceptance only of the $900,000 grant? All in favor, signify by saying aye, to use Mr. Akers' words. Okay, hands please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Those in favor? Hands?
In favor of what?
Excuse me, not in favor of the resolution. I'm sorry.
Of the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And Jim. Reagan.
Huh?
Reagan.
And Reagan. Okay. So the amendment fails 8-7. Back to the original resolution.
call the question, Mr. Chair?
The question is called. Is there a second? By Mr. Sheridan, Ms. Curran, and Mr. Akers. All in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think there has to be a vote, Joe, to call the question.
That's what we're doing.
No, you were.
That's what we're voting. Calling the question. We're voting on it now, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize then. I vote no.
Okay. So, all in favor of calling the question? Raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 votes. The 8 votes would carry it. The question is called.
No,
and
it's
the question.
Joe, it takes 10 votes. 2/3.
You're right. Forgive me. I apologize. So calling the question fails. So we are back to the resolution. Because the amendment failed, we're still back to the resolution. Is there anybody that wants to speak again to the resolution? Ms. Haggard.
Mr. Chairman, I made some comments earlier, and as inane and inappropriate and uninformed as I have found some comments to be made in this body, I have never laughed or snickered at a fellow legislator. I would ask you as the chair to not allow that to happen. And should it happen again, I'd ask that our fellow legislators be called out. It's just wrong. I won't put up with it, and I don't think I should have to.
Thank you, Ms. Haggard. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this resolution because I did hear the presentations. My mind was made up that night after hearing the presentations. They were great presentations. And I also know that the Community Services has voted once, twice, maybe 3 times, 3 times, that they think that the St. Lawrence Health System should be awarded it. Whether it was done in open session or not, that's what their intent was very strongly. And so the answer in terms of was it publicly, in my mind it is public. We went, the press was involved here when we were listening to all 3 presentations. It was covered well in all the newspapers. I think it was covered on Channel 7 News. So I'll be voting in favor of the resolution based on that premise.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Anyone else? Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we've had the 3 different entities that were vying for this, and you know, as Mr. Burke pointed out, the $900,000, it is indeed taxpayer money. And with that taxpayer money, our job, as I see it, is to make sure that the money is goes to the best possible place where it's intended for, and that's for treatment of folks that require it. And we have a community services board. And I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, a healthcare professional. I don't believe there's anyone on the board except for maybe a couple folks that are. So we have charged that board to make the decisions. And with their knowledge and experience, the facts they had in front of them, their choice was St. Lawrence Health Systems. So, because that was the choice of the board of professionals, that is why I would support St. Lawrence Health Systems. If they came back and said St. Lawrence the community services, that's who I would have supported.
Thank you, Mr. Denisha. According to my list here, the only people that haven't spoken twice to this are legislators Fay, Forsyth, Sheridan, Denisha, Kern, and Smithers. Any of those, Mr. Reagan, you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, you have.
No.
Okay, maybe I've got you in the wrong list, Jim. I'm sorry.
Margaret's snickering. Bless you.
Let the record show I'm not snickering. I would just like to point out that we're not talking about some entities. We're talking about 3 of our major hospitals in St. Lawrence County. Governor Hospital, Canton Potsdam Hospital, Messina Memorial Hospital. 3 of our major hospitals are stepping forward, offering to help us with a major health crisis. And at a time when we're seeing far too many deaths, far too many needless deaths, I would simply ask what most of the families in this county would want. I think most of the families in this county would tell you that they trust their loved ones with our hospitals, and that if our hospitals are prepared to help us during this time of crisis, that we should welcome their help and reach out to them and say, yes, let's create this partnership between government and our hospitals to get the best quality care in order to help these individuals and these families who are locked in the horrors of addiction. It is well past time that we took action and made sure that we had an organization like our hospitals that have the ability to attract doctors, recruit healthcare professionals, to bring them here to assist us in this time of crisis, and to give our healthcare professionals across the county this additional tool that can help provide some assistance to these individuals who are currently at risk of untimely death. So I'm going to vote for this measure because I believe that our hospitals are the best capable of assisting us with this important health crisis. Thank you.
Before we go on, let me apologize for omitting Ms. Fiacco and Ms. Terminelli. I am truly sorry. That being said, anybody that hasn't spoken yet or hasn't spoken twice has got the floor if they want it. Mr. Smithers.
I'll just say that I share your concern about operating within the law, Legislator Haggard, and I believe we should do that. And I think that we have done our job as a board. And if there's problems with how this community services board is operating, they'll have to deal with that. But I think we need to move forward. We've heard presentation after presentation, so I think it's time to act. I think we've done our job and we need to move forward, so I'm going to support it.
Ms. Terminelli?
Thank you. In the same vein as Mr. Smithers just mentioned, I do think that we do need to move forward with this and let community services or St. Lawrence Health System or St. Joe's put this to bed, put it to rest. But I am just concerned that since Mr. Burke brought up the fact that indeed this decision and this recommendation may have been in violation of open meeting laws, I just wonder, is there a possibility that by moving this resolution forward, that we could seek some kind of negative repercussions from either St. Joe's or the county for giving the nod or the okay to move forward with this resolution and granting this money. And if that's possible, then I do think that we should give the community health board the opportunity to make their 7-day announcement and reconvene.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Perkins has his hand up.
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
forgot you too, didn't I? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll stay in the shadows. I've been supporting community services for this right from the beginning, only because I believe they care for the patients, the clients. I truly believe that is their motive. I don't think St. Lawrence Health System has that in mind. I think it's the dollar. Not to say they don't have some care for their clients, but I think it's all about the dollar. And I think the clients would be better served at the community services. That's why I won't support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Anyone else? Anything further from the county attorney? Thank you. A roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
No.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
No.
Haggard,
No.
Piaco,
No.
Burt,
No.
Arquette,
No.
Terminelli,
No.
8 yes, 7 no.
Resolution is carried. We'll move now to the county administrator's report.
A few items to update you on this evening. This has been and continues to be a year like no other. That was the message I shared with you in my tentative budget message, and I greatly appreciate you approving the 2021 budget. We will do our very best to keep you informed, to give you options, and continue to provide quality services to the people of St. Lawrence County. Tomorrow, we will begin an expanded version of the daily health assessments, and all employees will begin receiving emails that will allow them to check in on a daily basis, which will record their increase or their potential increase for exposure or known exposure to COVID-19. Tomorrow, the Vacancy Review Committee will meet. 6 departments, or 6 vacancies total among 3 departments. That meeting will begin at 12:30 on Zoom. In finance this month, I would like to bring a resolution for your consideration to set aside the funds that were approved this summer for Bassmasters that were previously set aside so that they will carry over to be available in 2021. For Operations Committee next week, the next step in police reform efforts will be continued, led by Chair Lightfoot, and the Sheriff will provide a presentation on their efforts. Also a reminder that after the executive session, Johnny will provide the required training to you following the email communications with regard to the annual trainings. Each committee in November will take place on its own evening. I wanted to make a note of that, as well as extend my congratulations to all 13 employees and their families for sharing them with us in St. Lawrence County for approximately 405 years of service. Very impressive. Thank you to all of those individuals who may not have been joining us this evening, but certainly are appreciated. And lastly, tomorrow is Election Day. Our early voting totals, not including today, are over 5,000. It's an extraordinary effort by a small, talented staff. But many county departments work together to make sure the safest environment can be provided and that early voting and tomorrow Election Day can take place in a safe and professional manner. So thank you to all of those employees as well. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Appreciate it. What do we have? Any committee reports?
Question for Ruth.
Go ahead, John.
Margaret, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
If that's okay with the chair?
Certainly, Margaret, certainly.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Ruth, thank you for the shout out to the Board of Elections. I think one thing we need to keep in mind is after tomorrow, their work is only half done. They have a lot more to do, and I too appreciate so much the work they've done. Thank you.
Mr. Burke?
Ruth, could you give us an update on where we are with the remote working? Again, the reason obviously is the spike in COVID cases and the intent to try to alleviate congestion in the workplace to protect our workers, but also very importantly to protect the public that has to frequent our work locations. So if you could give us an update on where we are with that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, John. We have continued with the process that I reported on last week, returning folks to the workplace or the office functions. The dynamic has continued to evolve that during the time where we reduced our office density by executive order, we were getting the work done that was required. Now the dynamic or the paradigm has shifted to getting all of the work done. And I've been talking with Dana McGuire also about these spikes in numbers and considering, I want to speak with you a little bit later on about some ideas that we have going forward.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else for the county administrator? Okay, back to committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Seeing none, we have need for executive session for litigation, negotiations, personnel. What is personnel tonight?
With regard to a specific employee.
With regard to a specific employee and appointments. Entertain a motion by Mr.
Old or new
Forsythe.
business, Joe? Old business?
I don't even have it on here tonight, Tim. But go ahead. Old business.
I wanted to make a general comment about our last meeting, the discussion we had with sales tax, and my personal disappointment that as a board we would have several members make offers to the city when we are actively in negotiations with the city. I think it was at the very least it was in poor taste, and I think it undermines the process that we've had as far as negotiations are concerned. And some of the statements, the unmasking of those of us who would look to defund the police and fire, those kind of statements, I gotta tell you, are baseless. We're not looking to defund anybody. We're looking to make a reasonable decision, and those kind of statements just are so wrong and so they're twisted statements. And then to go on and talk about how the towns and villages have to worry that it's only going to take 8 votes to pull the rug out from underneath them, when there hasn't been one single discussion from anybody, either side of the aisle, that would suggest we would do anything to harm our towns or villages. Not one suggestion. And I guess I just need to say that for whatever reason, the chair of our negotiating committee found that he had to talk about offering the city 7.6 million in addition to the 1.9 million we've already given in the first contract, whatever reason that was, and then to offer to have a vote on it undermines the integrity of the negotiating process and undermines those of us that count on the integrity of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I'm not going to recognize you right now, Jim. Sit back and put it in your pocket for a minute. Thank you. Anybody
I'd like
else?
to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Go ahead.
I would like to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Mr. Reagan appeals the ruling of the chair. He does not agree with it. According to that Robert's Rules of Order, it is appropriate for the body to vote on whether or not they agree with the ruling of the chair. So I would ask, if you agree with the ruling of the chair, please raise your hand. Yes, they want to hear you, Jim. Go ahead.
Pardon me?
No, I guess everybody wants to hear what you've got to say. So go ahead.
Not me. Thank you. I just want to respond to the last comments. I think it is was clear at last week's meeting that there is a group of legislators who do want to cut a huge amount of money to the city of Ogdensburg, and for anyone to suggest that this would not defund a large portion of the Ogdensburg Police Department and defund the ability of the city of Ogdensburg to provide fire protection services and emergency services to their community just boggles my mind. It has been repeatedly known that the city of Ogdensburg's main expenses are its emergency services, public safety services, and a huge reduction in funding to them would be devastating in their ability to continue funding their police and fire department, as well as to meet the obligations that they've set forth in their union contracts. And it just, I find it shocking that individuals would be supportive of undermining the ability of a municipality to provide these basic services. And also, I would simply ask the members of the press to go and talk to the former heads of the Town Supervisors and Mayors Association and ask them whether or not there have been suggestions made to them of funding cuts to the towns and villages. No one has to believe me. They should ask the heads of the Town Supervisors Association and the Mayors Association why their boards passed resolutions asking us to leave the current system alone. And I would urge this body to leave the current system alone, keep the contract in place, and protect all of our municipalities and ensure that the current system, which has worked so well for so many years, continues to serve the people of St. Lawrence County. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Hager.
I was delighted to read today that Ogdensburg was able to cut their taxes So I wish all the municipalities were able to do that. Furthermore, I think my problem with this is we were united in an opinion. It isn't the fact that I don't support Augsburg or I want to see Augsburg fail. I think completely taken out of context. I think the point is that we had a stance as the legislative body, and then last week, the rug was pulled out from under us because something else was going on and nobody had informed, certainly not me. I don't remember getting a call to say we're going to do something different. But to imply that I want one of the city of Augsburg to fail is wrong. Number one, we had an agreement. We all were going to allow it to go on for one more year the way it is now. And I certainly wouldn't want Potsdam to get any less. And I would certainly welcome more. And I'd love to be able to cut our taxes by $1.24. So thank you very much.
Mr. Smithers.
I'm kind of new at this, but I kind of feel a little uncomfortable because I think maybe we're getting into discussions that we should be having in an executive session. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe.
It'll be brief. I just want to be on record as I have made no offer to anybody to give an extra $7.5 million away. So I just want to make that point, yeah.
Anybody else? Mr. Arquette.
Well, I disagree with Legislator Forsythe as he proposed in public session in a recording that he'd like to offer up 4 more years. That's the money we're talking about. He was unsuccessful, but he said that publicly. So I'm not sure what he's saying now.
Okay. Anybody else that hasn't spoken? Ms. Curran.
I have been contacted by the town supervisors of the places that I'm in charge of, and they don't want changes. They want the same deal that we have now. They want it for 10 years. They don't want anything to change. And the same with the mayors of villages, with the exception of Messina. But Waddington doesn't want to change. Louisville doesn't want to change. Steve O'Shaughnessy called me today and said, why can't you just keep it the way it is and move on to something else? So I'm hearing nobody wants to change. And that's kind of what I have to go with.
Thank you. Mr. Akers.
Thank you. And I thank Mr. Burke for bringing it up, even though it's taken us some time, John. Mr. Forsythe never made the deal. It was an open session. It was, what do you folks think? And it was immediate. It wasn't something that was discussed in the caucus. As a matter of fact, we were arguing in the caucus. Margaret Haggard is correct. We all voted on a 1-year extension. I don't believe that there was anybody that voted against it. And the purpose of the 1-year extension was to get some facts about what the census is and the appraised value. So I don't deal well when we're making financial decisions based on a possible hypothetical. So I think once we have those census numbers, and I think, Mr. Chairman, you said that we may have them by March of 2021, would that be correct?
If 10 years ago was the rule, they should be out by March.
So certainly I think at that time that as adults, we could look at those numbers and see what that represents for all our entities. There's probably adjustments between Potsdam and Canton, for example, as far as population shifts and the growth of the hospital and whatnot. So we do have that 1-year extension that gives us time. Let's be fair. We'll be fair to Augsburg. Let's see what the numbers represent. Maybe Augsburg is in better shape than what they were. We certainly never, and the papers didn't cover this well, we certainly never said about defunding the police and fire. So it was interesting to read today that city administrator, city manager, Jelly, was proposing shortening up the roster on the firefighters by 10 individuals. So good luck with that. But I think as a body, let's wait. My opinion would be let's wait. Let's get the numbers. We'll take a look at it then. I still support, as I think it represents a majority, that we wait see what those numbers are, and we share that those monies like we do with the towns, 50-50.
Mr. Reagan.
I just want, I think it's just boggles the imagination when people suggest that multi-million-dollar cuts to one community will not result in defunding the police and fire department when that is what makes up most of the budget. Let's not kid around ourselves. This is what you're proposing. This is what you've intended, and you should take responsibility and ownership for what you're proposing and stop quibbling and pretending that it's anything but what it is, and that is an effort to divide the communities in this county and open Pandora's box in order to, in the future, cut the other towns and villages as well. The other towns and villages have said repeatedly that they do not want to change the existing contract. They want a 10-year extension of it, that it has served them well, and it is time that we listen to the people of St. Lawrence County, listen to our towns and villages in our city, and I think that this board needs to understand that there's no one who supports this plan that has been proposed and discussed in secret for so long, other than a handful of individuals within this board who are now trying to deny their real intent.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're borderline executive session here, and negotiations are supposed to be held private. And I think, you know, the integrity has already been lost through the media with the mayor and whatnot. But I don't think we should do that. So I'd like to make a motion to move to executive session.
Is there a second? Second. A whole bunch of seconds. Mr. Akers, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're now in executive session. Once